approaching 7 p.m, Jackie Long's live from Westminster and Matt Fry's live from our studio in London with your Monday night Channel 4 News.
There you go.
It's huge, it stinks, and it's the UK's most dangerous illegal waste dump. But this one is on land owned by a man who prides himself on his love of nature, the King. Good evening. England, that green and pleasant land, or so we used to think. But this land is increasingly polluted by huge piles of illegal and dangerous waste. Few, though, are located close to houses or schools. The most dangerous of these is a festering, stinking mountain in a village near Wigan, right by a primary school. And this programme can reveal tonight that its principal owner is the Duchy of Lancaster, the King's vast portfolio of land, property and assets that generated £24 million of profit last year. So far, the Duchy has refused to cough up for the clean-up. Why?
And good evening from Westminster, where it's one in as Reform welcomes the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, the latest Tory MP to defect, and keeping one out. The Prime Minister feels the heat after shutting the door on Andy Burnham's hopes of becoming a Labour MP again. Amid growing rage in Minnesota over the shooting of Alex Pretty by ICE immigration officers, is the President softening his stance, as he says he's reviewing everything and sends his border czar to the city. And
The Queen!
a family's plea to make football safer after a coroner rules that former Scotland captain Gordon McQueen's brain disease was caused by heading the ball.
He absolutely loved everything about football, but ultimately that was something that, it took him in the end.
It has been called one of the most dangerous illegal waste sites in the country. A huge 25,000-tonne dump of rubbish located next to a row of houses and a primary school near Wigan. Toxic fires, rat-infested homes and a putrid stench. Life next to the site has been described as a living hell. For more than a year, residents have been begging the authorities to clean it up. But so far, the Environment Agency has not said it has plans to do so. The legal responsibility for the cleanup lies with the landowner, and this programme can reveal tonight that one of the owners of the site is the Duchy of Lancaster, the private estate owned by King Charles, who inherited the land in July. Our chief correspondent, Alex Thompson, has this exclusive report.
Flanked by houses, a playing field and a primary school. It's one of the UK's most dangerous illegal dumps. A rotting, stinking hill of largely household waste near Wigan. The lives of people nearby a living nightmare.
It's been hell. We've had rats, we've had flies, and then no one cares. No one cares.
No one cares?
No. I had rats scurrying around the whole ceiling, and with having 2 children that were petrified, we had to do something straight away.
Last summer, the waste heap went on fire, shutting the school for days. A major incident was declared. And tonight, Channel 4 News can reveal the owner of most of this dump. The owner who is trying to avoid paying a penny for the clean-up, trying to force you, the taxpayer, to foot the bill instead. And that landowner is the King. June, and the King drops in to one of his ancient homes in the area, Lancaster Castle. It's more than 1,000 years old. He owns this because of feudal laws which still govern much of the northwest of England. He gets land and property, lots of money and lots of profit. The Duchy of Lancaster made 24.4 million last year and has assets of 679 million. Usually, if someone dies in England and has no will or next of kin, their property goes to the Treasury. But this huge swathe of the northwest is the ancient County Palatine of Lancaster. If you live here, it goes to the Duchy of Lancaster, the King.
But what happens when land gets ceded to the King, which has big problems? And that brings us back to that stinking illegal rubbish heap near Wigan, behind me. The previous owner of part of this site went bust, so it was ownerless, so it was ceded to the monarch. But unlike the rest of us, King Charles has a get-out clause when it comes to footing or not footing the clean-up bill.
The King's officials simply argue that when he's given land with problems, called escheated property, he doesn't bear any responsibility. They told us the duchy legally does not take on any liabilities in relation to escheated property. But there's more. Duchy officials told Channel 4 News they're trying to give the land to the council, which would mean taxpayers footing the bill. The duchy has offered to transfer the land to Wigan Council and to cooperate with them to try and resolve the issue. We confirmed to the council that the duchy had no objection to the council or Environment Agency using their statutory powers to enter onto the land for remediation purposes. In plain English, we want you, the taxpayer, to pay for the clean-up, which will be millions. Wigan Council, though, is not having that. It's already beginning to clear up its part of the site, imploring all those owning this site to take the necessary steps to fulfil their obligations, as the council put it. The Environment Agency can't force the King to clean up the mess, but agrees the obvious: he could pay for the clean-up if he wanted to. Baroness Sheehan, chair of the House of Lords Environment Committee, came to see the site for herself.
Well, what can I say, Alex? I think seeing it with my own eyes, it's beyond my imagination, actually.
But then we told her the King owns most of this site and is trying to give it away to the council, thus avoiding the clean-up bill.
Well, I take my hat off to Channel 4 for your investigative work. I think it is a revelation, and I think it'll be interesting to see, now that this is in the public domain, what happens next. The facts as you've presented them, it does seem rather unfair that the taxpayer is yet again having to pick up the bill for cleaning this dreadful, filthy mess up.
It is a curious position for a monarch with a long track record of environmental campaigning.
Our children and grandchildren will ask not what our generation said, but what it did.
Moreover, the King has explicitly stated that income from land and property acquired through feudal laws should be used for community and environmental purposes, not for profit. When he came to the throne, the King said that money should not benefit the privy purse, but should be used primarily to support local communities, protect the sustainability and biodiversity of the land. Strange indeed, then, that the duchy and thus the King appear to be doing something very different in this case.
As you can see, we've ended up taking our ceiling down because we had rats in our ceiling. We need to get the bait up.
something.
Yeah, it's really strong. Now, we do
People
have the bag
trying to live next door to the dump just want it solved. Rats, flies, smell, illness, a son with special needs, unable to stand it, who had to move to relatives. Nisha Rosen has been through it all.
So what puts this right?
Moving it. If they move it and then put something in place, this doesn't happen to anybody else in the country again. But once it's moved, the smells should then stop, which means my child can come back home and we can be a family again.
Tonight, the Duchy of Lancaster told Channel 4 News it is prepared to discuss all these issues with Wigan Council. But, as the King said, our children will ask us not what we said, but what we did.
Alex Thomason with that report. Well, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, joins us now. Thanks for coming on the programme, Ed Davey. How appalled are you by this story?
It's quite shocking. My heart goes out to the families whose lives are being turned into a nightmare because of this. The smell, the fire risk, the reports, they feel like it's a prison. And, you know, what's happening in Wigan is happening across our country, Matt. You know, there are huge tips in places like Camborne, in Burnley, in Sittingbourne, in Kent, all across the country. And there are hundreds of these tips, some small, some as large as you've seen in Wigan. The government needs to get a grip on this, and they need to tell the Environment Agency to, first of all, be quicker in stopping the tipping in the first place and then get it cleaned up and
Right.
get after the criminals, these waste criminals who are behind this.
But the Environment Agency is very clear. It says the responsibility for cleaning up the land, even if stuff was dumped by criminals, is on the landowner. The landowner in this case, principally, is the king. So should the king be cleaning this up?
Yeah, I think I think the government needs to put more pressure on the Environment Agency to do a little bit more than that. I think that's a bit weak from that. I think if they worked with landowners, whether the king or anyone else, landowners who are not involved in this crime will cooperate. I mean,
sorry to stop you there. Sorry, David, but this has been going on for a year. The residents have been complaining about this for a year.
Longer than that, Matt.
Well, this particular dump. The king inherited the land in the summer because of the strange rules around the Duchy of Lancaster. But surely someone in the Duchy of Lancaster knows what's going on. Should they not just pay for the cleanup? This is the right thing to do, especially if you're a sovereign who prides himself on your environmental record.
Well, they can speak for themselves. It's actually been on 17 months, a long time. And you're right that we need to make sure that landowners work with the Environment Agency. The real villains of the piece here are these organised criminal gangs who are making the lives, people in Wigan, but people across the country, absolutely unbearable with these horrible fly tips of gigantic size. And I'm afraid the last government, the Conservatives, didn't get a grip of this. This government hasn't. I've raised it in Prime Minister's questions. There was an example in Kidlington in Oxfordshire of a horrible tip like this. And the government, had fine words, but really hasn't taken the action. Although in that case, to be fair, because of our pressure, the Environment Agency is cleaning it up and is footing the bill. Given what we achieved there from that Liberal Democrat pressure, I hope we can see that happen more.
But
and I just call on the Prime Minister to get a grip.
OK, the Prime Minister, the Environment Agency, the one body that you're not calling out is the Duchy of Lancaster, the owners.
No, but clearly they have a role to play in this, but the law says that the Environment Agency needs to go after the culprits. If a landowner has been involved in some sort of conspiracy for this, then they should bear the cost. But some of these criminals are not getting caught, and even if the court when they are caught, they're not being forced to pay the penalties. The penalties need to be higher. This is a real problem for our whole country, and we've got a lot of ideas. You listen to Baroness Shahshean, one of my Liberal Democrat colleagues in the Lords. We've been leading on this issue, putting a lot of ideas for the government to take up to solve it. And to pay for it, and I'm afraid they've been hopeless.
And I'm afraid we've run out of time. So, David, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now let's go over to Jackie in Parliament right now. Jackie.
Thanks, Matt. Now, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, said, quote, "I feel like I've come home," as she announced her defection from the Conservative Party to Reform UK. It follows those of former Tory MPs Robert Jenrick and Andrew Rossendale in the last fortnight. Labour said Reform leader Nigel Farage was stuffing his party with Tory failures. But Sir Keir Starmer has problems of his own, as he's facing a backlash after Labour's ruling body stopped the Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham from standing in the Gorton and Denton by-election. Here's our political editor, Gary Gibbon.
What do you make of the NEC's decision, Mr Burnham?
I'm not making any comment. I said what I needed to say, and here I am, back in my job, full focus on my job as Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Andy Burnham insisted today he was back entirely dedicated to the mayoral job. He just tried to leave.
Getting on with my job now. Thank you.
Keir Starmer, who had urged Labour's national executive officers to block Andy Burnham's bid to get into Parliament, was today still insisting it was all about not stretching Labour Party resources with the bill for a Greater Manchester mayoral contest.
Andy Burnham's doing a great job as the Mayor of Manchester, but having an election for the Mayor of Manchester when it's not necessary would divert our resources away from the elections that we must have and that we must fight and win. And resources, whether that's money or people, need to be focused on the elections that we must have, not elections that we don't have to have. And that was the basis of the NEC decision.
One member of the National Executive Committee admitted his colleagues who were at the weekend meeting with Keir Starmer that blocked Andy Burnham had other motives as well, trying to head off a potential coup by Andy Burnham. He and his allies had given every indication, as far as you could see, that a plot was afoot to topple Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
There was no reason to think otherwise, was there, despite what Andy Burnham says? And you couldn't really hand him the keys to Keir Starmer's house.
No, and I think that's asking was asking the people that are responsible for the sound management of the party and for its best interests to have acted in a very perverse way.
Some on the left of the party acknowledge they wanted Andy Burnham in Parliament in the hope he could replace Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer is one of the most unpopular Prime Ministers that we've had. His trust has been lost by so many people, you know, and I would say he needs to fear for his leadership at this moment in time.
You would want Andy Burnham inside Parliament with a view to challenging him quite soon.
Andy Burnham is a very popular politician. He won the election for mayoralty in 2024 with 63% of vote and every single box. That says something about the popularity of the King of the North.
Some Labour MPs aren't won over by any of the alternative candidates to Keir Starmer that get talked about and think that might save him.
There will certainly be discussions and maybe a challenge if the local election results are as bad as they're expected to be. But a challenge could make things worse. It does. I mean, we have a lesson to learn from the mess of the Conservative Party. We'd have to be sure, as a parliamentary Labour Party and as a party, that at least one of the candidates would improve the situation.
And you're not sure
I'm not sure
they would?
I am not sure it would, and that's the most important thing. We could make a basket.
He's not that good, but you can't see anyone better. Doesn't say much for government, does it?
It doesn't say much for the situation we're in.
Would you please welcome to the stage former Home Secretary Suella Braverman.
Across town, Nigel Farage was welcoming yet another Tory defector, this time arriving on stage on cue. Suella Braverman was Home Secretary, though she was sacked twice from the job, once after 43 days, then again after reappointment a year later.
Today, I'm announcing that I resign the Conservative whip and because I believe with my heart and soul that a better future is possible for us, I am joining Reform UK.
The Conservative Party reacted with a statement saying the Conservatives did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy. The statement was later withdrawn.
Well, it is a bit pathetic. As I said, it says more about them than it does me. I'm not really going to dignify it. I'm afraid, just more sorry signs of a bitter and desperate party that's in freefall.
Nigel Farage said, like previous defectors, Suella Braverman had been required to admit her role in past mistakes. One senior Tory said Nigel Farage was helping them detoxify the Conservative Party.
Well, another former Home Secretary, Conservative MP, Amber Rudd, is at the launch of the new centre-right Conservative movement in central London and joins us live. Amber Rudd, thanks very much for joining us. Presumably, politically, there may not be much you agree with Suella Braverman at the moment, but I'm assuming you agree with her when she said this statement about her mental health was just pathetic, wasn't it? It was pretty grubby.
No, yeah, that's totally unnecessary and not to the point, and is a sort of unwelcome distraction from what's actually taking place, I would say.
But it speaks to judgment, though, doesn't it, from the party at the moment for a lot of people? I mean, she talks about it as the sort of the last throes of a toxic and desperate party, and that is what it looks like to a lot of people.
Look, there's a lot going on in politics at the moment. A lot of people don't know who Suella Braverman is. She's gone to join Reform. I wouldn't personally, I'm not going to dwell on that anymore. If I may, what I'm very excited about is something I'm enjoying here at the moment, which is the launch of a new political movement on the centre-right, which is explicitly pro-business. And I think that Suella and Robert, who've joined Reform, and Reform itself, are not interested in what we're really interested in, which is making the case for business being at the centre of politics and policy. I work in business now, and I find that I'm asked so many times, where are the policies to help us? And that's why we're launching Prosper UK, to go across the country, to get out of Westminster and to engage with businesses and make sure that they're put at the centre, because they are the ones that take the risks, provide the money, the tax, the employment. And I really feel, and that's what the evidence shows, that there's a market for that in the voters as well as the public.
I mean, it's funny enough, Nigel Farage was talking just today about saying the next people that he'd be looking to take on board to the party were people who work in business.
Well, good luck to them is what I say. I feel that there is a case to be made for the centre-right. In my experience, the businesses I talk to are nervous about the populist right, where they threaten to tear up contracts and change trade agreements. What businesses need is a party that understands them, that will help build stability and work with them. They thought they had that, a lot of them, with Labour, but my goodness, a lot of them are suffering from buyer's remorse. But what we're trying to do here at Prosper UK is create a movement that will help to make them, the businesses, part of the policy, and to show Kemi Badenoch this needs to be part of her policy development. We're going to come up with ideas and with innovation and make sure that the Conservatives are at the centre of this.
Forgive me, I'm having quite a lot of trouble. I'm having quite a lot of trouble hearing you. But can I just ask you? You know, you said there, Suella Braverman, you know, most people won't know who she is. I mean, within politics and within the Tory party, she was once regarded as quite a big name. Do you view these defections as a really good thing, a sort of clearing out of the right-leaning MPs in the Conservative Party? Or do you accept that it looks like, as your former colleague Robert Jenrick said a little while ago, a party that deserves to die?
No, I do not accept that at all. And, you know, I wish Robert and Suella well. I didn't know them well, but they've found somewhere they think they can succeed. Good luck. My experience, what the Conservative Party needs to do is really engage with the business, the employers, the entrepreneurs, the people who take the risks, and that's why we're launching Prosper UK. And we hope that as many people as possible will join it, because it's not just about me or the other leaders of it, like Ruth Davidson and Andy Street. It's about individuals. We want them to join.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to end it there. The noise is very loud, but thank you very much for battling through it. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, it's being billed by ministers as the biggest shake-up of the police in England and Wales for 200 years. The reform package announced today will see the number of forces being drastically reduced from the current total of 43 by a series of mergers. There will also be a new national police service dubbed Britain's FBI that will take over investigations into organised crime and major fraud and will oversee counter-terrorism operations, which are currently run by the Metropolitan Police. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Simeon Brown.
This is a view from the front line of policing that the government has pledged to enhance with what they call the largest reforms since the founding of the police. This means action on serious organised crime would fall into the remit of a new national service, and smaller forces being merged into regional units the government say will prioritise community policing. But among those plans is a major concentration of power and a nationwide rollout of surveillance technology and artificial intelligence.
Communities are facing an epidemic of everyday crime that all too often seems to go unpunished, and criminals know it. Taken together, these reforms will put the right policing in the right place. An elite national force will tackle nationwide crime, regional forces will conduct specialist investigations, and local policing will tackle the epidemic of everyday crime.
The Home Secretary's plans will create the National Policing Service she's called Britain's FBI. The body will merge the College of Policing, the National Crime Agency and counter-terrorism. In these plans, small forces face amalgamation. The government say the 43-force model is no longer fit for purpose. Some forces are too small to handle complex investigations or major incidents. In their new plans are powers for the Home Secretary to intervene in the policing system where necessary, and reintroduce power for the Home Secretary to remove a Chief Constable. This is one of the cases cited for where the Home Secretary would have used those powers. This month, the former West Midlands Police Chief Craig Guilford retired following national pressure over intelligence errors in the decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from attending a game in Birmingham. But this example raises concerns, as despite police mistakes, the facts of the ban remain contested, with some local support expressed. Some now believe new political powers in an era of divide could compromise independent policing. For now, the focus turns to police leaders as they form a convoy of support for reforms promising to put more bobbies on the beat by replacing local police bureaucracy with a national one. Where is the evidence that ultimately centralising power will lead to less phone thefts, will lead to less crimes at a local level?
This is not a centralisation of power, this is a simplification of decision making. It's a means by which we can make sure that every pound of taxpayers' money is spent on good operational services, and at the moment there's too much duplication in the system.
What I can't say, because the funding that sits around these conversations is not clear, is what the overall mix of our workforce will be, or the overall numbers. And we should be really clear, the Met has been shrinking. You know, so part of the change which we have driven out in London, and part of the change we're talking about nationally, is to be even more efficient. But we're doing that under strain, and we're doing it under the strain of an organisation that has got smaller.
This is the concern of these reforms, that despite plans to redeploy 12,000 officers in backroom roles onto the streets, police numbers may still be squeezed. And as the review into the restructure starts, so too may the battles from smaller frontline forces facing closure.
Simeon Brown there. Well, a short while ago, I spoke to the Policing Minister, Sarah Jones. I pointed out that people are far more interested in getting the police to come to their house quickly when they've been burgled than getting a British version of the FBI.
We absolutely have to make sure that people have the response that they expect from their police in their local neighbourhoods, which is why we have already committed to 13,000 extra police in our neighbourhoods, and why that is the bedrock of these reforms.
People want to know when this is going to happen. It's years and years away, isn't it?
So the reform starts now. We've already put 2,400 extra police in our neighbourhoods. That's already done. Every part of the country has a named officer in their local community. That is already done, that they can contact. And there is a lot of work underway across the police forces. But you're right, everybody in every part of the country needs this change.
And I'm right, it will take years.
And what we are saying is we need to standardise what we expect, because there are some parts of the country doing brilliant things on retail crime, other parts not so much. We need to make sure it's happening across the country, and we will be doing that.
To meet their commitment, for example, where if it's a serious incident, they're supposed to respond in towns in 15 minutes and in rural areas in 20 minutes. Give people a deadline for that.
These things we want to deliver this side of the election before then, and some of these things we're already delivering in terms of neighbourhood crime.
Okay, one of the criticisms is that, you know, these bigger forces actually become more remote from local communities. They don't understand local communities. What would you say to people who make that point?
So we're learning from other parts of the world, other parts of the country. Northern Ireland and Scotland have one police force. We've learnt the lessons.
And it took a very long time to settle in Scotland.
It didn't work.
It was a very bumpy road.
And some of it did work. I think the lesson from Scotland is you've got to be hyper-focused on the local all the way through.
We spoke to the Met Commissioner just a few weeks ago, and he told us extraordinarily that they are arresting people who are being charged, and the court date isn't until 2030.
Well, we are dealing with huge challenges in that space, as you know, that we inherited from the last government. Prisons overflowing, huge court delays. We know that there's court reform coming. We know that we are tackling that challenge, and absolutely people need to see justice at pace, which is why my colleagues in the Ministry of Justice are reforming the way that we do that.
And just very briefly, a lot of people have a lot of concerns about increased powers from a Home Secretary. We saw the last couple of years where policing has become a really divisive issue. How do you convince people that this is not going to make things worse?
Well, I think most people would be surprised in the recent case that we had, for example, in the West Midlands, that the the Home Secretary didn't already have those powers. They were taken away under the last government. They were there previously. We're going to put them back. It has to be the right balance.
Because it's the politicisation that people worry about.
The police need to be operationally independent, but it is right that the government, on behalf of taxpayers, we are spending a lot of taxpayers' money in our policing system. It is absolutely right that we have the levers that we need to ensure we can drive improvements.
Very quickly, sorry, on Andy Burnham. I mean, who is Keir Starmer more afraid of? A popular Andy Burnham or a popular Nigel Farage?
Keir Starmer's not afraid of anything. I think we saw that last week with the way that he was very clear in standing up to the President, whether it's on the remarks that he made, the appalling remarks that he made about our troops, or whether it was what should be right in terms of... I think a lot of MPs in a lot of parts of the country have said this is the right decision. It was a difficult decision for the NEC to make. They were balancing up some difficult issues, but we have got a large election in Scotland, election in Wales, adding to that the equivalent of 20 by-elections in Greater Manchester. At this point in time, with the resources that we've got and the focus that we need to have on those elections, that was the choice that they made, and I think it's got. I think it's the right decision, and now we, I think, can all hopefully carry on talking about policing and the issues that the country care about.
If reform in the sea, will this have been
We've just fired the starting gun and we are fighting to win. I absolutely expect we will.
And no U-turn on this?
On whether we're going to win, no.
Sarah Jones, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, amid a growing backlash over the latest killing by ICE officers in Minneapolis, Donald Trump appears to be trying to calm tensions. After nurse Alex Pretty was surrounded and shot dead on Saturday, the Trump administration described him as an armed domestic terrorist who'd been intending to massacre ICE officers. Video footage suggested that wasn't true, and tonight the White House refused to repeat the language. Donald Trump has said he will review everything surrounding the shooting and is sending his border czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis. Our US editor, Anushka Astana, reports from there.
This is what they said about Renee Good.
This was an act of domestic terrorism.
She was trying to ram this guy with her car.
This is what we saw.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you.
This is what they are saying about Alex Pretty.
An individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage and to kill law enforcement.
The victims are the Border Patrol agents. I'm not blaming the Border Patrol agents.
But this is what we see. Pretty was gunned down by federal agents whose own lives did not appear to be threatened.
Call 911.
To many, the Trump administration is trying to distort a reality that people can see with their own eyes. The president has described these scenes as a war against an enemy within. An enemy that seems to include immigrants targeted in ICE raids, Democratic politicians now bringing out the state's National Guard to defend their streets. And even these protesters. Chillingly, Trump seems to be targeting the states that voted for his political opponents. Blue states, like Minnesota.
It's absolutely abhorrent how ICE has been behaving in our city. I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm you know, it's hard to put into words how we're all feeling.
It's shock, it's anger, it's just purely stunning. I never truly believed we would see something quite like this in the United States of America.
ICE out of Minnesota!
The people of Minnesota came out in their thousands on Friday. They perhaps didn't realise they'd be back out so soon, but many had warned that another tragedy was inevitable.
ICE out!
And they're afraid that there may be more to come.
Are you questioning what's happening in America?
100%, 100%.
This schoolteacher talks of emptying classrooms as the children of immigrants study online from home, their families virtually in hiding.
You feeling sad?
We're enraged. We're sad, but we're so mad. We're so mad. We can't believe this is happening in our city to people that we know, people that are good people. They have friends whose parents have been taken. there are no words. I mean, they're afraid for their lives. They're afraid for their families. They're staying home. They're hiding.
Why did you want to come here?
Because I knew that what they're doing isn't okay, and we can't just let that happen.
But could the killing of intensive care nurse Alex Pretty be a turning point? Today, the president unexpectedly posted that he had spoken directly to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who wanted to work together. Despite vilifying Walz for weeks, Donald Trump says he now realises they're on a similar wavelength and is sending his border czar to the state. Does the administration now think it went too far in defending the officers who shot Pretty?
There was absolutely no danger to any of these agents.
Justifying their actions by arguing that he had a loaded weapon on him angered even natural allies like the National Rifle Association.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple.
Actually, in Minnesota, Pretty was entitled to carry that gun.
It's perfectly lawful. Everybody who's down here is well within their rights to carry. You can carry at a protest. You can carry openly. You can carry concealed. You can carry with multiple ammunition magazines.
Do you find it interesting that we've got the National Rifle Association and left-wing protesters all criticising the president on how he's behaving when it comes to the Constitution?
It is an interesting union of kind of uncommon allies. Even if you disagree with some aspects of the Second Amendment, the right is there, and it's not just for one side or one purpose. It's a right that's available to everybody.
There is a famous American saying, "Who you gonna believe, me or your own lying eyes?" The claims of the Trump administration about what has happened on the streets of Minneapolis have felt almost surreal at times. But there is no doubting the reality of their tragic consequences. Look, it is clear to me that the Donald Trump administration are rattled by the response to Alex Pretty's killing. They are still hitting out at what they call a biased media. They are still saying that protesters here are agitators. And look, there were some quite upsetting scenes last night when windows were broken in a hotel where there were allegedly ICE agents. But overall, the tone has changed dramatically, not just Donald Trump's post, but also in the last hour we've heard from the press secretary Caroline Leavitt, who has set out how Border Patrol agents could be removed from this city. She wants the local mayor, Jacob Frei, to work with federal officers, saying that police here would need to help by handing over illegal aliens and actually go out and try to help federal officers to detain people. Now, I've spoken to people close to the mayor, Jacob Frei, and what they say is these are not asks, they are ransoms, and some of them are totally unacceptable. Their local police officers will not take part in immigration roundups like that, and they don't buy this argument that it is all violent criminals being taken off the streets. They give examples of US citizens and immigrants who have done nothing wrong, and I have to say I've seen that too. This morning I was with a mother of 3 who was jailed for 2 weeks, but she had done nothing wrong. And so they say this isn't actually the start of a withdrawal. It is a list of ransoms, and they remain very worried about what is happening in this city.
Anushka in Minneapolis, thanks very much indeed. It is, by the way, minus 14 degrees Celsius there. Now let's speak to Andrew McCabe, the former deputy director of the FBI. He was dismissed by Donald Trump after he'd also sacked the FBI director, James Comey. Thank you very much for coming on the program. You heard Anushka Astana's report there. I mean, there's sort of mixed messages coming out of the White House tonight. On one hand, Caroline Leavitt was ramping up the language against, Democrats and radical lefties and so on. On the other hand, there seems to be this path to de-escalation. What do you think is actually going on?
Well, I think you're giving them a lot of credit by characterizing it as mixed messages. I think it's chaotic, poorly organized, poorly communicated messages, many of which are provably false. And that's fundamentally the administration's problem around this issue. So when they seem to be changing tact and they request things, they don't have a lot of credibility. They have repeatedly misrepresented the facts that are occurring on the streets of Minneapolis day by day. They mischaracterized the killing of Renee Good. They referred to her as a domestic terrorist. They called her wife a domestic terrorist. Neither of those things are true. They've released false information on the White House social media pages, admittedly, willingly admitting to doctoring arrest photographs of individuals and things like that. So the situation we had this weekend with the killing of Mr. Frei really capitalized on all that. They've called him a domestic terrorist. They said he brandished a gun. They said he, was in the middle of a riot. None of those things were true, and the facts that prove that are plainly obvious in the many video recordings we have of what happened.
And they are very, very quick to make judgments as soon as someone has been killed without looking at the evidence, it seems. How dangerous do you think this moment is, especially when it comes to pitting, this federal agency, ICE, against local law enforcement, for instance, or your former organization, the FBI?
It's quite dangerous. It's quite dangerous. So these are organizations that need to cooperate day to day to accomplish their very different missions. They have unique authorities and capabilities that enhance each other's ability to be effective and to promote the public peace. But that cannot happen in a situation where the sides don't trust each other. So now we have a situation where there are two notorious killings of unarmed citizens in Minneapolis, neither of which can be effectively investigated because the federal government has taken custody of some of the evidence and has really not pursued very vigorous investigations, but they have denied access to that evidence to state officials. So, the public loses here because we won't find out what the results are of a fair, unbiased investigation until one actually happens and it's shared with us.
Do you think that what we've seen on the streets of Minneapolis could be repeated on the streets of New York, or Chicago? We've seen elements of this in other places. This is in a different class. Do you think we could see more of this?
There's no question we could. They started another operation in Maine just last week, and within the first 24 hours executed a notoriously controversial arrest of an active duty corrections officer. So this is happening again and again. And each time it happens, it further undermines the public confidence in law enforcement, makes the job harder for every cop in the country. But I should say, I'm hoping that this experience in Minneapolis has turned into clearly a public relations problem for the White House. And maybe that will change their mind about how aggressive they want to pursue some of these tactics.
Because if they carry on with this, I don't know, for whatever reason, you're really going down very, dangerous paths here, aren't you? I mean, your country had a civil war essentially an half ago.
We did, and God willing, we won't do that again. But there has been talk with the return of President Trump to the White House. There's been talk consistently about his interest in invoking what we call the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act is very broadly written. It gives the president great authority to send in the military to any U.S. city when they determine that a state of rebellion exists or that it's necessary to preserve the enforcement of federal law. So we could be in any one of these cities on the brink of that very quickly.
Okay, Andrew McCabe, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Jackie.
Thanks, Matt. Now, China's defense ministry has launched an investigation into its most senior general, sparking speculation about another purge. General Zhang Youshi was also thought to be a close ally of President Xi Jinping. 8 top generals were expelled from the ruling Communist Party on corruption charges in October last year. The news comes as Sir Keir Starmer prepares to travel to China on a business-building trip this week, in the first visit by a British leader in 8 years. Lindsay Hilson reports.
President Xi Jinping presides over the largest military in the world. He was showing it off last September. The People's Liberation Army boasts 2 million men at arms. And women as well. 4 million if you count reserves and paramilitary. Thousands of battle tanks and armoured vehicles. 600 operational nuclear warheads. They're working at breakneck speed to catch up with or overtake the US military. But as quickly as they modernize their kit, they're losing, or rather the president is discarding, senior officers. This weekend it was the most senior officer in the PLA, General Zhang Youshi, seen here with the then US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. He's been accused of violations of Communist Party discipline. That makes 11 generals dismissed in the last year.
He was being seen as one of the most competent professional soldiers in the People's Liberation Army, trusted by Xi Jinping, and they went back a long time, both in terms of family relationship and personal relationship. They kind of grew up together for a short period of time. And if General Jiang could be sacked, no Chinese general in the PLA can feel that he is comfortable against being sacked by Xi Jinping.
President Xi's wife, Peng Liyuan, was a singer with the PLA when they met. She has the rank of Major General. Under the Chinese system, he is Commander-in-Chief.
同志们，朋友们。
By dismissing so many military officers and political cadres, most ostensibly for corruption, he has ensured that his power goes unchallenged, like Chairman Mao, who died in office.
Since Xi Jinping came to power, the purge has been a feature, not a bug. He has repeatedly changed officials in the party, and he stripped the army hierarchy to the core. He has removed generals, heads of the nuclear rocket force, people involved in planning for Taiwan. Lots of key officers have gone. That, of course, means that there will be replacements, and those people are more likely to be loyal to him and obedient to his commands.
Shoot at the targets to the north of Taiwan Island, he says. Don't worry, it's only a drill. But if one day it's for real, China will have the most modern army in the world. The question is whether the purges will destabilize the PLA or make it more lethal. Last year, President Xi Jinping won the trade war that the US president had started. This year, he's trying to ensure that he wins all other kinds of war too.
The Israeli ministry has said it has retrieved the body of the last remaining hostage in Gaza. In a statement, the Israeli Defense Forces said that they had located the remains of police officer Ran Gvili, who was killed during the October the 7th attacks, and that his family had been informed. The discovery of his remains marks the end of the first phase of the peace deal, with all Israeli hostages retrieved from Gaza. Kanye West has issued an apology for his anti-Semitism just days before his new album is released. The rapper, songwriter and producer, who now goes simply by the name Ye, wrote an open letter in the Wall Street Journal titled "To Those I've Hurt," where he linked his past offensive remarks to a bipolar disorder, saying he had lost touch with reality. The singer wrote, "I regret and am deeply mortified by my actions in that state, and I'm committed to accountability, treatment and meaningful change. I am not a Nazi or an anti-Semite. I love Jewish people." Channel 4 News is now on Substack, as I hope you know. Get our exclusives first and analysis from our award-winning journalist in your inbox. Subscribe to the newsletter for free at channel4news.substack.com. And after the break, is it time to curb footballers heading the ball? A coroner rules that the brain disease that blighted the later years of one of the stars of the 1970s, Gordon McQueen, was probably caused by heading the ball. Now, as a footballer in the 1970s and 80s, Gordon McQueen was known for his ability to head the ball. He went from winning the league with Leeds United to raising the FA Cup with Manchester United. The 6'4" defender's ability to win aerial battles even helped Scotland to a famous Wembley win. But his later years were blighted by dementia. And today a coroner ruled that his death at the age of 70 was caused in part by heading footballs. Andrew Misra reports.
McQueen!
A trademark header from Gordon McQueen helped Scotland to a famous win against England at Wembley in 1977. So often towering above the opposition, McQueen was an old-school defender known for his aerial dominance, which also made him a valuable goal threat for Manchester United.
It was headed straight in by McQueen.
Each header, though, took its toll. He was diagnosed with dementia in 2021 and died 2 years later, aged 70. Today, Gordon's daughters heard a coroner confirm their father's belief that heading a football likely caused his brain injury.
We've seen it, sadly, firsthand, and the way that Dad suffered. He loved football. He absolutely loved everything about football, but ultimately that was something that, you know, it took him in the end.
We're very grateful to the coroner for his thorough investigation. He went to a lot of detail. It's very meticulous, so
Yeah.
I think there's no denying the outcome.
The inquest concluded that McQueen died from pneumonia as a consequence of mixed vascular dementia and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a degenerative neurological condition which it's now established footballers are at significantly greater risk of. Gordon McQueen died more than 20 years after another footballer, Jeff Astle, who also had CTE. And in those 2 decades, many feel authorities simply haven't moved quickly enough in recognising the damage that heading a football can do to the brain.
I think they're scared, you know. They're scared. They're not sure, you know, what the best approach is. They've got to stand up and make a change.
English football's governing body, the FA, says that while the link between heading and brain injuries is up for debate, it is taking a leading role in improving safety. While the Players' Union, the PFA, said it recognises a need for a collective response to support footballers affected. Heading has always been an integral part of football, though campaigners are adamant players can be better protected by limiting unnecessary exposure in training.
The steps are very, very clear. Gordon died from CTE. CTE is only caused by repetitive head impacts. Therefore, how do you solve repetitive head impacts? You reduce the frequency. It's the cumulative intensity of impact. And most of the head impacts take place in training.
Impacts that led to 5 of England's 1966 World Cup winning team getting dementia. All have since died, Bobby Charlton most recently. And there are now more voices than ever in football warning the game has a duty to its players. Learn from the past to protect their future.
And tonight's main news, an investigation by this programme revealed that an illegal waste dump near Wigan is on land largely owned by the Duchy of Lancaster, which is the King's extensive private portfolio of properties and estates. And before we go, we'd like to apologise for some bad language that you may have heard in our report from Minneapolis. I hope you didn't. That's all we have time for this evening. We are back at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Until then, that is Channel 4 News. Have a fabulous evening.
Good evening. Our weather's looking very lively as we head into tomorrow with Storm Chandra sweeping in across the UK. There are Met Office yellow and amber weather warnings for both heavy rain and strong winds, with disruption likely to travel and power supplies, and in places there'll be some flooding as well. Here's the storm then sweeping in through tonight and into tomorrow, initially bringing steady and heavy rain, some hill snow too in the north, but eventually some strong and gusty winds, particularly for western coasts and hills. So here's a look at the warnings then for tonight and into tomorrow. Rain warnings cover various parts of the UK, but the area of greatest concern is the amber weather warning across southwest England. That's where there's the greatest chance of seeing some flooding. As for the wind warnings, they're focused across western coastal counties of the UK. Gusts potentially up to 75 miles per hour, particularly in the amber weather warning area across the eastern side of Northern Ireland. So tonight then, cloudy skies and bits and pieces of rain, but if anything, the rain quickly turns steadier and heavier across southern and western parts of the UK. The wind really starting to pick up too. Gales around the coasts and over the hills in the west by the end of the night. Mild in the south, around 4 to 8 Celsius there, but colder further northwards, temperatures locally fairly close to freezing. So tomorrow, the storm really gets going, sending an arm of very heavy rain northwards across the UK, hill and mountain snow for Scotland and northern parts of England. Sunshine and showers will follow on behind, but windy widely, especially though for coasts and hills in the west. That's where there's the greatest risk of seeing some disruption due to the wind. Cold in the northeast, 3 to 7 Celsius there, 8 to 11 Celsius towards the south and the west. Now, thankfully, Wednesday will be a relatively quieter day, but still some rain, sleet and hill snow across northern and eastern Scotland. There'll be some heavy showers drifting in as well across Northern Ireland, Wales and southwestern parts of England. But in between, it's mostly dry. There'll be a mixture of clouds and sunshine and temperatures close to average for the time of year. Enjoy your evening. Take care. Goodbye.